Hi everyone, Gem here from the Colour Cave, and today I am going to demonstrate how to colour a shaggy festive wreath. I am going to be using this design here from the really pretty Colouring Heaven collection issue 46, Santa's Workshop. If you enjoy this tutorial and would like to colour along, you can order your copy from shop.colouringheaven.com. That link will be in the description for you. So let's go colour. To really enhance this shaggy texture that we've got on this lovely festive wreath, I am going to be using some Polychromos pencils by Faber-Castell to complete this image. So as you can see here, there is a lot of texture on the actual greenery, the wreath part of this image, and that's what we're going to try and enhance and really work on and get the most out of it we can to make this a shaggy textured wreath. To start us off, what we want to do is get a base colour down and think a little bit about light and shade before we start to work on that texture aspect. So to begin with, I'm going to be using earth green, and I'm going to get started on laying down some base colour here. So it doesn't matter where you start here, you can pick any point, and what we want is a medium pressure. We don't have to be too careful and picky about a perfectly smooth lay down here. The idea is just to get a little bit of colour down on the paper to give us a starting point. So I'm just going to use this earth green, and I'm literally going to go all the way around this wreath and get this layer of colour down. Obviously we have to be mindful of little areas like this where our little elf's very cute hat is curving round there. So make sure we get into those nooks and crannies as well. This is such a cute image. I've only just started and I have to say I'm feeling festive, and that's one great thing about this issue of the magazine, is that if you're not feeling Christmassy or festive when you start, by the time you finish I can guarantee you it will be. So we have a bauble in behind here, so we just want to be careful that we are not wiping that out. You can just see it hiding in behind the ribbon there. So we don't want that part to be green, we want to just make sure that we've got everything the right colour. So now that we have this initial layer of green pencil down, we're just going to work a section at a time. And we're going to build up each area so that we've got some nice rich colour in behind to really give that idea of fullness in our wreath. So now I'm going to switch to Chromium Green Opaque. And I'm going to start in this top right hand quarter. I am left-handed, so it's easier for me to start here. If you're right-handed, you might want to start on the left-hand side instead. So let's focus on this top corner. Now the first thing I want to do is find a natural stopping point. So you can see here we've got this, there's a candy cane, but there's also a bauble here. And because we've got this textured edge, that creates quite a natural stopping point. So I'm going to have that there. And I'm going to take this whole part here down to this candy cane here. Again, the same thing, we've got the candy cane that's breaking up the green, but we've also got this texture line here. So again, that's a natural resting place. So we can take that as one section. Now the idea of breaking these down into sections is just to make it easy to colour, nice bite-sized chunks, and you don't have to feel overwhelmed, which makes it more fun and keeps it nice and relaxing. I've sharpened my Chromium Green Opaque to a reasonable point. It's not a sharp point, but we do want to get a little bit of definition in here now. So if I just start down here, where we have these sections that have been marked out, I want to make that look as if it's an overlap. So I'm going to take this pencil and using a flicking motion up and down, I'm going to take that in between each of those jagged sections like this, to really make that stand out. And the same in here. Because I'm using a flicking motion, it's naturally fading itself out the further away. Elf. Oh, I do love a good pun. Fading itself out towards the tip here, which is exactly what we want as well, because we still want this contrast in the lighter area too. So that's the general idea, and it's just a case of keeping your eyes peeled here, finding those sections. So there's a little cheeky one in there. Just make sure I put that in. Around with that now. Naturally, the idea here is to be creating texture, so we don't want very smooth blended lines, because that's really the opposite of what we're looking for, and there is a tendency to want to smooth everything out. So when we're doing these flicking motions, be confident in those strokes and let them be there, and let the texture be there, because all that is doing is going to add to the final effect of your wreath. We are going to build some more colour up over this, so don't worry if it looks a little bit scrappy or a little bit untidy. I promise you by the end it's going to look very full and very shaggy. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my earth green pencil now, and I want to build up this lighter colour. Again, medium pressure. And if I just look one little shaggy section at a time, so you can see there the colour looks a lot fuller in here, and I want to go back in with my Chromium pencil now and press that little bit harder and start to enhance those sections that we've just done. Just like that. Now we've got lots of natural stopping points here, just because the nature of the picture and these little shaggy sections, which is really handy. And it's nice and easy to see, for you to see where you've been and where you need to go. Just a little section at a time here. Now we have little parts like this that are tucked in behind, and they're very, very tucked in there. There's hands and baubles and all sorts there. We just want to make those nice and dark. Don't need to worry too much about the texture aspect. That's a really small space in there. So as long as it's in keeping with the rest of the page, we don't have to agonise too much about making it look textured. Now when we have objects like this holly leaf here, we can take a similar approach as we've done with these overlapping sections, but just perhaps not in such an enthusiastic fashion. So if I take my Chromium pencil here, and just on the bottom side we can make the assumption that there's perhaps a light source coming more from the top rather than square on or the bottom. And if we take our Chromium pencil, we can just add in a little dark area and just follow the line of the holly leaves there, just to make that like a little drop shadow. And then I can return back to my earth green pencil, carry on my merry way here. Again, another area in here where everything's quite tucked in. So you can see I've just done the same thing there with the bauble as I did with the holly leaf. I just put a little bit of a shadow there. I can do the same with the candy cane. It's up to you how much of that you want to put in, because there's going to be quite a lot going on round about it, so it's not imperative, but it's there to add in if you so desire. So there we have a completed section of the base colour, and I'm just going to repeat these exact techniques in other sections of this wreath. So again, I have a very natural section here that runs from our stopping point down to the edge of this ribbon here, and that gives us another little nice chunk to work away with using our earth green pencil and our chromium green opaque. Carrying on with this flicking motion here. If you feel your lines aren't sharp enough at any point, just give your pencil a little sharpen, get that definition back in there and get some really nice precision with a pointy point on your pencil. Although we do want contrast and, you know, we want that sort of light and dark and all these different parts of shading, the colours still have to look as if they belong to the same item, or else it starts to look a little bit odd and a little bit disjointed, so we want to try and avoid that. And that's why it's quite important to have a good think about your colour selection before you start. And also to try your pencils out. Some of you may already have a swatch book, but I always find it's a good idea to try the colours on a little scrap of paper before putting them down on your colouring page. Just in case. Here we are, I'm back with my earth green now. Start mixing this in here, blend it together a little bit so that it looks like it's all part of the same wreath. I'm making this a little darker in here. Again, there's quite a lot of overlap and things going on in this section. And moving on down to the next section now. So again, I'm back to my chromium pencil here, and I'm putting in these darker areas with my flicking motions where these overlaps are, to give this illusion of a shaggy wreath. I really like that word. I think it's a very descriptive word for this, because it is. It's shaggy, isn't it? One thing we do need to pay attention to here is when we think about a wreath, we have to think about the practicalities of how it's been put together. And you can see here the direction that my flicks have been going in, have been following this curve at the bottom of the wreath. But what we have to remember is the same thing's going to be happening on the other side. So there's going to be a meeting of these parts here that are going to join up down the bottom here. So that's something that we need to be aware of as well. And just make sure that we've got those pencil strokes going in the right direction. So here I'm still going from right to left here, but I can see, and it's very clear that the direction changes at this point, so we want to start going and flicking left to right on this section here. I'm just making this a little bit darker in the crook of this candy cane here as well. And like we were talking about earlier, sections like this underneath his cute little elf shoe. Oh my. I'm going to make that a little bit darker under there too, and possibly around this ribbon as well, just to indicate that the shoe is much further forward than the greenery of this wreath. I want bows on my shoes like that. Gone over the lines a little bit. Oh no. I have my trusty eraser here. There's quite a lot going on under this bauble here as well. So again, I'll take the Chromium Green Opaque and just make this darker down here. Okay, start working up this left hand side now. Get those flicks in. And then grab my earth green. Maybe pop a little bit of the Chromium Green Opaque in there again, almost like a shadow. Again, I'll just pop a little bit of this Chromium Green Opaque round this bottom side of the candy cane. Just as we've done before, nothing different, nothing special. When we're putting in these darker areas around the other objects that are on the wreath, we don't have to follow the line work to the absolute letter. We do still want it to look quite natural, so don't feel as if it has to be a really regimented line. Naturally, it is going to be a bit more regimented on a very straight edge, like the side of a candy cane there, but don't focus too much on trying to get that perfect, because as I said, because we're going to be layering a lot of things over the top of this, it's not imperative that everything is very, very precise or accurate, as long as there's an indication there. And a lot of the time, the brain's a very clever thing, the human brain. It is able to fill in the gaps. So if you give a suggestion of a colour or a shadow, quite often our brains put all the pieces together and give you the whole picture, even though you haven't provided the whole picture. So even just a suggestion of a shadow there, our brains will do the rest. And that's all we need, because we don't want to make more work for ourselves than we have to. Okay, time to tackle this last section and then we get on to the fun stuff. So back to this section here with this ribbon and the bauble. I have deliberately made this very dark in here, just using that Chromium Green Opaque colour. We can do the same in this candy cane part here. Yeah, a little darker part there. Okay, so this is where the fun part starts now. We are going to add in some pine branches, some pine needles, and really bring this to life. So I'm going to start with a brown pencil, which is the Burnt Umber. And I also have here Chrome Oxide Green, which is the next step down from our Chromium Green Opaque. And with this part, you can work in sections, just as we've done with this background colour, but we need to be mindful that these sections don't look disjointed, and I'll explain why as I go along here. I'm going to start in this top right hand corner again. And for this, we want a very, very sharp point on both of these pencils. So get your sharpener out and make it that pointy point. Oh, there we go, like this. So first of all, taking the green pencil, which again is the Chrome Oxide Green, find a place to start, and the ideal place is under one of these overlapping sections, so just beside this candy cane here, and we're going to have some pretty confident wayward flicks here like this, and we just want to go for it, so we're pressing quite hard. And these are going to be our pine branches. So we want them going in a general direction, so following these overlap sections. Now we do want to try and avoid your candy canes and the holly wreaths, but there will be some overlap because naturally when these things are, you know, they've got pine needles on them, they're not all going to be tucked perfectly in behind. So we want to work on each section here. Now this is what I was saying about sections. We do want to work in sections because it's easier, but we need to make sure that it doesn't look disjointed, and some of these pine needle branches are going to follow on into the subsequent section. But we can worry about that a little bit more. The likes of here where there's a lot of open areas and no overlaps, we really want our lines to come all the way across here. So being a little bit more careful, I can draw one in that spans that entire area, and that will help prevent that disjointedness that I was just talking about. Areas like this where you've got a bauble in front, you can be a little bit more careful. You know, maybe don't flick quite as hard. And if you go out with the wreath, that is a-okay as well, because you're going to have some rogue branches there as well. So I'm going to stick to this right hand section here, now that I've kind of explained what we're going for. And you do want these of varying lengths. Oh goodness me. A bit over enthusiastic there. So when you feel you've got enough coverage, and this is purely down to preference, this is aesthetics, using that same pencil we want to start putting the needles in, and this is a really good gauge of whether or not you need to be doing more or adding more in. So each of your flicks, you're just going to add diagonal lines along the side of your flicks. So you can see there, like this. And some of them you can add them on both sides. So what that does is give the viewer the idea that they're looking top down at these pine branches rather than to the side, which these ones here would suggest. And just work your way around, add those in. So pressing fairly hard when we're doing this as well. We'll make this one come in front of the bauble. Why not? A rebellious one. In the tighter sections we have to be a little bit more careful. We can't go flicking lines about everywhere, but we'd still do want to add them in. We just have to do it a little bit more carefully. So once you're satisfied with the distribution of your green pine branches, we are going to go in with the burnt umber, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So when I'm picking out the areas to put in the burnt umber branches, I'm looking for natural gaps in what we've done with our green ones. So in here, there's space there. Now you don't want them to be absolutely alternating because that would look a little bit strange, but we can be selective in where we want to pop these in. And we always want to go by the less is more mantra. With pencil, we can always go back and add in more if it's not enough. If we go overboard to begin with, it's very difficult to erase, especially when you've got several layers of pencil like this. So better to be cautious, take a little step back and look at all your branches and decide whether or not you'd like to put in some more or whether what you have done is enough. Okay, now to start to bring this together, I have got the dark sepia pencil. And I'm going back to this flicking motion and I'm just picking up on the areas where things overlap. So underneath our holly leaves here, and those overlap sections that we coloured initially when we first started the background colour. So you can see I'm just working my way around there. And you can maybe pop in the odd branch as well, just with the sepia, if you feel that you would like a little bit more depth there. So all of these overlap areas here, this is really where we want to be using the sepia most, in all these little corners here. Now I'm just going to add some pine needles to the sepia branches that I've popped in there. And then we can move on to our next section. So this is me back with my Chrome Oxide green pencil. Start putting those pine needles in. And I can take the burnt umber now. Maybe I'll have a sneaky one going out into the middle part here. And we can add in some more. Maybe put some brown needles in here too. And back in with the sepia, just to darken up a few areas here and there, especially under these items that are popping out. Now in these smaller sections here, we can just go for that impression, so we can pop in those pine needle length lines, but we don't actually have to put any branches or anything in. Again, we really don't have a lot of space in this section, but maybe we could have one popping out here, similar to here. Again, just give that suggestion that these branches are in fact all over a wreath. And we can pop a little bit of the sepia in again, as before. Some of these overlap areas. Back to the Chrome Oxide green now. I'm enjoying this issue of Colouring Heaven very much. There's quite a few images in this special that I'm looking forward to colouring after I've finished with this one, obviously. There's one of one of the little helpers, like Santa's little helpers, and he's filling sweets into like a paper cone, and there's just lots going on in the picture, so I'm looking forward to colouring that as well. Some of the images in this book are absolutely adorable. I see these little elves are just something else. They're special. I like them a lot. Especially their shoes. So if you'd like a copy of the magazine, remember you can pick it up at shop.colouringheaven.com. The link is down in the description. Just add in a little bit of brown here and there. I'm really just using the brown as more of an accent than anything else when it comes to the branches and the pine needles. Obviously, if all of our pine needles are brown, that's not going to be good for our wreath. That would indicate that our wreath is maybe not very alive. But it's nice just to have a little bit of variety in our colours when we're doing something like this. So I've got the sepia now, and I'm just going to put in those darker areas. This is when I was talking earlier about less is more. This is a prime example. Don't go in too heavy with this too early. If you look at it later and you think, oh, that's a bit light, well, that's good, because you can go back in with this sepia pencil, add another couple of strokes, and just get everything to where you want it to be. Have an area here under this bauble. I just feel like it's not busy enough under here, so I'm just going to pop another couple of branches in. I really want one to be hanging down as well. I want a rogue one that's kind of escaped the wreath. It's making a bid for freedom. There we go. I've got a rogue one. That's me happy now. Maybe it's just been a little bit windy. And it's come untucked, who knows? So as I come to the underside of this wreath now, and you just saw the stroke that I used there, I am using a very sweeping curved motion. How much as I like these rogue little branches here, we do need to keep the shape of the wreath. Good grief. And there will be this crossover point that I talked about earlier when I was talking about the background. You are going to have a crossover left to right and right to left. That's absolutely okay. You don't need to worry about that. It's going to look very natural. I promise. Again, in behind this bow, that's an area where everything I feel should be darker. So I want to add in a couple of more branches there. I'll take the sepia pencil now. So rather than following on round the wreath in a clockwise direction, because we're trying to get the direction of these branches correct, it's actually easier to go back to the top at this point and start on this left hand part, because it's much easier to have a pencil stroke going down the way than it is to constantly have it going up. It's just a very natural reaction. So we're going to go back up to the top here. And we are using the same technique and the same pencils. And we're going to make this left-hand side match up and look as shaggy as the right. So that's me going back to my Chrome Oxide green pencil. Now we've got this little part here, and that's one of those sections where we just have to try and blend it in. So carefully, I'm going to mark in a few branches, and I'm deliberately putting the start and the end of those pencil marks in behind these objects, and the idea behind that is to create the illusion that these branches are here, but you're not actually suggesting where they start or stop. So we're just making this continuous over the top arc of the wreath itself. So we can have the pine needles going in both directions as well, as long as this area just looks as if it is meshed in with the rest of the wreath. It's not really a problem. And we'll make it nice and busy as well. Have another one in there. So this just requires a little bit of time and a little bit more effort. Let's have a wayward one up there, why not? And then we can perhaps have one that's disappearing down in behind hat here, and then we can carry on as normal. So much wider, longer, more confident strokes. Don't need to be quite as careful. Change the direction of them a little bit as well. Wreaths obviously will naturally go round in that arc shape, but you know, if you go and buy one, especially at this time of year, you buy the fresh wreaths from the florist, you quite often see that although they've tried to tuck the branches in, there's some that just have a little bit of a mind of their own, and I kind of like that. So we want to evoke nice festive smells, and having a wreath like this with all these pine branches, that's going to make you think of those nice, fresh, natural smells. So I'm just carrying on this branch down past this candy cane here, and that's what I was talking about earlier, about making sure that each area flows into the other, so it's not obvious that we've worked in sections. Okay, grab the burnt umber now. And again, I'll be more careful in this section here, because we're really using this as a linking section or a joining section, whereas everywhere else we're just doing our thing, we're just being ourselves. Just going for it. See a few pine needles in there in the burnt umber, but we don't need to go crazy with that. And then off to our sepia. I think we've got plenty going on in this top section here, so we don't need to go crazy with the sepia. I do feel we've got this little area here that looks very light, so I'm going to go back to our original pencil, which was the earth green, and you can do this anywhere you feel that if it's just a little bit too light, and you can just go back over and put a careful layer with a medium pressure of that earth green down, and you can just see it's taken away the starkness of the paper a little bit, but you're not losing any of the surrounding texture. Anyway, back to my sepia here. And let's grab the burnt umber, put in a few lines here and there, make it look a bit earthy. So again, I've got another little area of green here that I just feels a little bit too pale. So I'm grabbing that earth green pencil again, and I'm just going to put that and make that a little bit richer. Same round this candy cane here, that's better. And off we go with this flicking motion again. Get those pine needles in there. Time for some burnt umber branches here. And again, just darkening the underneath parts of these overlaps of the original line work in the image. Making sure as well these areas around the items in front are kept nice and dark as well. Again, the sepia is really helpful for that, just to add that little bit extra that you need to make something just stand out that little bit more. Okay, coming down into this last section now, so this is where we're going to get this crossover, and again that's just natural, so we want to make it look natural while still keeping it relatively tidy, obviously, so we'll tackle that just shortly. So I'm going to have some branches coming over here, and we should be able to blend the rest in fairly seamlessly. I think we've got enough going on there now. So as we go along here, remember to keep your pencil nice and sharp, give you those nice defined pine needles. So when we come to this area here, we just need to make sure that we've got that crossover and that it looks fairly even, as if those branches are coming together naturally, and I think we've done a decent job here. Let's get some burnt umber branches in. And a final little dab of our dark sepia pencil again. And we'll just finish off these shadier areas in our image here. So just before we finish up here, it's good to take a little eye around your image and just tweak any areas that you feel are maybe a little lighter than others, or if you've got a little bald patch here or there that needs a pine branch in. I have 1 or 2 here. And just adding in a little bit more of my sepia in a few spots as well. So that, again, this is just down to preference and aesthetics, and I'm sure you will all find the perfect place to stop and say that you are done. So there we have it, everyone, a nice shaggy festive pine wreath. If you've enjoyed this tutorial and this design, don't forget you can order a copy of Colouring Heaven Collection issue 46 Santa's Workshop from the online shop. Just head to shop.colouringheaven.com, or you can click the link down in the description. We'd love to see your Christmas wreath colouring in our Friends of Colouring Heaven Facebook group, so head over there if you want to join in the fun. Please remember to like and subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future Colouring Heaven videos. Thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.